we did have a request to record the web seminar, so we're going to do that. A few people weren't able to attend. And, you know, again, this is not supposed to be a web seminar. It's much more informal than that. We want it to be interactive. As we've talked about before, there is a panel where you can submit questions in writing if you want to, or if you want to press the little thing that says to raise your hand, and on the control screen I'll be able to unmute you. And, you know, again, we wanted to keep it an interactive conference call, but, you know, between the hold music and then just the wind from people being, you know, working remotely, which, you know, I do all the time too, just was making it hard to get the content across. So, again, welcome everyone, and away we go. So let's start with what today's agenda is going to be. We have 44 people on the call so far and counting. Usually we have about that number, and it looks like we've got a good representation from around the state. So welcome everyone, and thank you again for making time. This is just a standing call for anyone who is interested in THP+ or THP+ foster care. Everyone's welcome. Advocates, THP+ or THP+ foster care providers, your county partners. You know, if you care about this type of housing for current and former foster youth and you have an interest, then we're happy you're on the call. So what we're going to do today is, at the end of our last call, we did a little poll, and there was a strong interest in having a presentation about another example of a rent program. And Amy Rowland of Olive Crest very generously offered to share hers. So thank you, Amy, and we're going to turn to that in just a few minutes. Then we're going to have an update on the number of providers, and then for the first time an update on the number of THP+ foster care participants, which is exciting. The data is of January 1st, so it's not as of today, but it's the information we have. Then we're going to just take a moment to review the AB12 question of the week from last week. It was about an infant supplement, and it had to do with THP+ foster care. Then we'll turn our attention to THP+, an important program that's available for young people who aren't eligible for extended care or, for whatever reason, don't prefer that option. And then we'll close out the meeting with just a little laundry list of some different items, some legislation, a funding opportunity that I think many of you on the call would be a great fit for. And so I want to make sure to bring that to your attention. And then that should all be completed by 11 o'clock. So again, thanks everyone. If anyone is having technical problems, probably the best thing to do is call Simone's cell phone. And let me just give you all her cell phone number right now. It's 310-779-8603. That's 310-779-8603. And or you can always call our office number. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Simone and Amy for our discussion about the Olive Crest approach to rent in THP+ foster care.
Good morning, everyone. I want to thank Amy Rowland again just for agreeing to be a part of our phone call. I know all of you guys that are providers are so busy running your programs and all the other things that go along with that. When you take the time to participate on this call and present, we just really appreciate it. So we asked Amy to present today because she has a slightly different approach to structuring rent in THP+ foster care. And she also has a savings program that we think that would be of interest to you guys who are operating programs. So I'm going to turn it over to her at this point, and she's going to describe her program. And I'm just going to ask Amy, I don't think you've entered an audio pin. We just want to make sure that people will be able to hear you. So if you haven't entered your audio pin, it should be on your control panel on the right-hand side of the screen, and it should say audio pin, and then you press pound. So we are going to wait for you to do that, and then we will unmute you, and you can present. While she does that, I'll just say she's Olive Crest is a program in Orange County. They used to, a while back, be a THP+ provider, and then they stopped with THP+, but they continued a very similar program, transitional housing for former foster youth, and now they are a THP+ foster care provider, so they definitely have a lot of experience with this population and this type of program. So it looks like Amy still not entered that audio pin. Oh, and I have a chat from her. Where do I enter the pin? Okay, so if there's a section that says audio on your control panel, you can press the little plus sign, and the audio thing will pop out, and you'll see the phone number to call in and an access code, and then you'll see audio pin. So if you don't see that, send me a little chat again. And I just want to make sure that, Amy, that you know to call in using the telephone and not the computer speakers. Okay.
Simone?
Yeah, great.
Hi, sorry.
Okay, sorry,
my
everybody.
goodness, I got on early so I could be all prepared, and then I wasn't.
Well, sometimes the audio thing disappears, so we got to make it reappear on the screen to know that. So I'm going to, what's that? Oh, okay. Yeah, so we're going to switch the slide over to you, and now you're on.
Okay, great. Well, hi, everybody. I'm sure a lot of you I've met before, and I'm excited today to share what we're doing here at Olive Crest down in Orange County, and we're about to start in the Inland Empire and someday, hopefully, in LA with our THP+FC model. So I think I've heard Simone starting to say that we do have a THP program that we've been doing for about 13 years down in Orange County, and so and we did do THP Plus scattered sites. So we kind of used the best practices of that to kind of mold and form our voluntary rent model. So all of the youth are encouraged to pay rent, and we talk a lot about that this is an exercise in real life, which I'm sure you all do too, that you have to pay bills, and rent is a part of that, and we put all of that away in savings because obviously we're being paid a rate to care for those youth, and so that's what makes it voluntary and an exercise in practicing of paying rent. So our rent starts at $50 a month. Usually the month the youth moves in, we don't really worry about rent if it's the middle of the month or try to prorate it and things like that. We just start on the first of the month that they start officially of the first month that they live in. And they give us $50 a month, and every 3 months that goes up by $50. And then we save that on behalf of them. So one of the things that we've noticed in our THPP program over the years is that, and I'm sure all of us have experienced this too with our own families, is we encourage them to save, and we talk how important it is to save, but they're young adults, and when they see a paycheck, they just want to buy that new phone or an iPad. I mean, they have a lot better gadgets than I have. So we tried to get creative about a way to incentivize savings. And so through a lot of fundraising, we use a lot of leveraging of our fundraising department here to help us raise funds. And we used to have a scholarship that we gave out, so we kind of used that money as well as just savings within the program that we have and grants, and we do a match. And so we want to encourage them to save on top of their rent. So on June 1st, some of our youth gave their case manager $50. We have one youth that's really excited about the program, and he gave his case manager $250. So we'll match that full $250. But there's other kids that just give their case manager an extra $10 or an extra $25. It's like even the smallest amount will add up and will match. All of the participants, in order to participate in our savings match program, you have to be you're working on your goals and have no rule violations. And so that looks like, being in school and working, paying rent, meeting with their case manager, working specifically on some of the goals that we've set in their 7 domains. And then as they exit our program, they get all of their rent and all of their savings match contribution back to them.
So Amy, I want to ask a few questions, but first I'm just going to switch to the next slide so you can kind of describe, people can kind of see how this rent pans out. You said it goes up by $50 every 3 months, and I just wanted people on the call to be able to kind of look and see what that would amount to. And this example is for a youth that's entered THP Plus foster care. you know, at 18 and then aged out, you know, they turned 21 and aged out, so they were in the program for 3 years. So it may be not super realistic. We don't know how, you know, how long people are going to end up staying, but this is a scenario that's a 3-year scenario, and it's just going to show how the rent goes up and then kind of what that looks like at the end when they leave, like how much can a youth really save by paying in to this rent program.
And then we kind of looked around and did an average of what our youth that are older emancipated youth and even some of our staff are paying to rent rooms here in Orange County. And it's really, you know, typical to find someone renting a room between $400 and $500 a month. So that's where we've capped our scale too. That's kind of why we started at 50. We kind of picked our cap and then worked backwards. And then the other thing about the rent is that some of our youth cap out at like $250, and we'll stabilize where they're at in our rent model for 6 months or for 3 months while they're in school, you know, a semester of college, and then it's summer break, and then they're ready again to start increasing by 50 because they're working full time. So we kind of individualize it as well because we think any contribution towards their rent is great and that they're willing to participate in it.
Okay, great. I want to now kind of just turn the page a bit to talk about this savings program that you mentioned. And I know that you explained that if a youth is meeting their goals and, you know, participating in case management, you know, and they're paying this voluntary rent, that they're eligible to participate in this savings program where if they contribute any additional amount above that rent, all of CREST will match it 1-to-1. And so this scenario shows where, you know, the youth is paying their rent. You see that in that little second column, rent paid by youth. You see what the youth is contributing for savings beyond that rent. And then you see that all of CREST is matching that amount that they're saving. And then you see the total savings. So, you know, this is kind of what in entirety how a youth could save at the end of the program, you know, based on the rent that they're saving and their savings that's matched. So Amy, do you have anything that you want to add just about the savings program?
No, it's interesting because I think, you know, people might wrestle with like having enough money to actually do that within their own agencies, but you'd be surprised at how many kids, youth don't participate. It's a great incentive and is obviously voluntary, and it's a great way to get them to you know, be willing to contribute to the rent, but not very many of them do it. So it's a great thing that we're really invested in here. So, and our case managers really push it and try to coach the youth on how to actually even put aside their change in a bucket, you know, in their apartment and count it out. And then, so you mentioned this on the phone to me. You mentioned that youth don't have to participate every month. Like they can choose to do this sporadically. Is that right? Yeah, depending on the month. Like if they're, you know, some of our youth are really focused on school and the job hasn't been the most important thing, and so they haven't been able to participate because they aren't even working, you know, part-time or a couple hours of volunteering. But now that the summer's starting, a lot of them are getting jobs, and so now they can participate now. So, and some months they might not have extra money that they want to give us to save, but next month they do. So it's just kind of whenever they want to. And then we track all of that here.
Okay. I want to move to some questions. There are a lot of questions popping up, which is great. And coincidentally, we've actually written out some questions, and a couple of them are covered in, you know, people are asking these same questions. So that's great. I'd actually like to jump to first just these questions that we're getting from the participants on the call. We had one question that's actually on this screen as well. Is rent, quote-unquote rent, paid from their own earnings or from some of the reimbursement rate the provider is receiving from the county? And then what are the consequences if youth doesn't pay rent in full or pay rent at all?
Mm-hmm. So in our program, we give them grocery cards that they use every week to purchase food. So that's about $200, you know, depending on the number of weeks, to $250 a month for food. And then after that, sorry, I got distracted by someone walking by my office. we give them an extra $50 stipend just to be used for whatever they might need, like clothing or hygiene or laundry, things like that. And some of the youth will give that back to us as rent if that's all they have because they're not working. And that's optional too, because we'll save it for them. But we wouldn't kick anybody out just because they couldn't pay rent. The case manager would really focus on what the barriers are, the challenges are, because there's probably other issues or things going on more than just paying rent that's kind of impacting their ability to make money or participate positively or actively in the program.
Yeah,
Did
so
that
this
answer
is
that?
actually, that's a great point, because just this question that was asked, you know, what happens if a youth doesn't pay rent? Well, I mean, obviously, the program can work with them and encourage them to do so, but you cannot be forced to pay rent in THP Plus foster care. We'll just make this, you know, this clarification here, because I do think there's been some confusion around it, and Amy's explaining right now that it's a voluntary program. Youth in THP Plus may pay rent, but THP Plus foster care, it is voluntary. If it's coming out of their own money, it's essentially a savings program. It's all being saved on behalf of the youth, and it's voluntary. It's totally voluntary. They, you know, can't be kicked out for not paying it. And so thank you, Amy, for clarifying that.
And then we spoke a little bit too, Simone. Like we have, I mean, I'm sure like all of you, you have like a handful of youth or a couple that are have been significantly traumatized in their life, more so than the average foster youth. And like we have a young man that's with us, and we're just really focusing on his mental health needs and stabilizing him and his like health and well-being, and we're really moving towards like getting him to shower and eat 3 times a day and get out of his apartment. And so getting a job is just not even a priority right now for our team. But has he paid rent in like 9-10 months? No, but that's not, we're not going to kick him out for that. I mean, he has significant challenges and barriers that we are working with him on, so in a different way, you know, and he gets the $50 as well, the stipend, and sometimes he might, you know, give his case manager even a couple dollars so that he feels like he's contributing, and then the rest of it, you know, he's, you know, using for laundry and other things.
Great, so it's a really individualized program, it sounds
Right.
like. And so we have a couple other questions here that are being put forward, and in a little while what we're going to do is open it up and unmute people if they do want to ask questions verbally. But someone asked, who opens and has access to savings?
So we help the youth open savings accounts, and some of them, it is kind of optional. Like we want them to set up a separate savings account apart from the account that they're currently using, like their checking and their, you know, for their own life, so that it's something that they don't touch or they can't tap into with their card. Can they access it? Yeah, they could. But the rent that they actually pay us, we've put into a savings account to put in, but the match stuff. So they can sit with their case manager and show them a printout of their savings account to just show that they're still saving and they haven't touched the money. And yeah, sometimes they do touch it. But we want them to have conversations about that. Or we're setting up a goal like you want to buy a car, and if you keep using it to like go shopping for clothes or to go out with your friends, you're never going to get to that point of getting a car.
Okay, so it sounds like the rent you save on behalf of them in something separate, but the money that they put towards savings and the match goes into a savings account.
Yeah, we actually don't give them the match from Olive Crest until the end. So whatever they're saving,
okay.
We track it internally, and then when they leave, we'll give them all the money that we would have matched each month.
Okay, all right. And then I have another question, one last question from someone on this question bar here. And so you kind of answered this already, but we'll elaborate a little bit. Does Olive Crest provide allowance for youth to pay rent? If so, how does Olive Crest manage budget? You know, do they pay landlords for apartment rent and pay staff while returning all rent paid to youth at exit? So kind of how is that money? So it's kind of like more.
Yeah, we do corporate leases. And so all of the apartments are leased in Olive Crest's name, not in the youth's name, as well as the utilities. That's just the model that we use as thinking that that's the best practice for our program. And so the rent that the youth are paying isn't really going towards the real rent. It's literally going into savings.
Okay, and then actually one more quick question. Is the match of up to $250, is that per month? Someone wants to know?
Per month. Per
Yeah.
month.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just on the screen here, you've really actually covered most of these questions. You talked about how you're able to provide the match because you fundraise. You talked about how you get youth to participate in this. You know, it's strong case management, it sounds like, and working with the youth to understand the importance of savings. You, I think the only thing you haven't addressed, when does this rent max out? Does it max out? Like, do they have an amount they can't go above?
No, like we say our ceiling is between $400 and $500 a month for them to pay. Is that the question? But some of the youth can want to save more, so they could be paying at the top and giving the $250 for the match. So you're looking at like $650 or $700 a month that they're putting into savings. Okay. But nobody's ever hit that ever since we've been doing it. Yeah.
So at this point, I'd like to open it up. So we have some people, Amy, or some people raising their hands, it looks like. No? Okay, so if anyone wants to be unmuted and say their question verbally as opposed to typing it in, oh, I think we do have a hand raised. Is Lisa Muller raising her hand, it looks like? So Amy is going to unmute Lisa to ask her question. All right, Lisa, you are unmuted. Oh, you're listening on the computer. Well, if you want to dial in using the telephone number under audio and dial in an audio pin, we can unmute you. And in the meantime, does anyone else want to raise their hand and ask a question of Amy? You're also welcome to type it in, but we'd love to hear from some people since we do want to encourage this to be more of a conference call than a webinar. Let's see. Anyone raising their hand?
Well, Amy, this is Amy Lemley. I have a question just to get to a little bit more of the previous question about, so the question was, does Olive Crest provide an allowance for youth to pay rent? And kind of what I'm getting from your answer is essentially $50 that they can pay back. And then you're using the rate, you're paying the landlord
correct
out of the rate that you receive.
Right, and the case managers, yeah.
Exactly. So that rate is, as it is intended to, fully covers those costs.
Right.
Okay. But you privately fundraise for this match.
Correct.
And, you know, is that a hard thing to do, or?
No, not at all.
Okay. Maybe just say a few words about that.
Sure. It's surprisingly not, because this population, I mean, people are really interested in, committed to, and passionate about supporting. And so we, you know, I go to a lot of speaking events and I take youth with me that talk about how impactful saving money was and what they use the money for. And also, and I'm sure most of you have youth like this too, that can speak to how they could focus on school for the first time in their life and not worry about the, you know, electricity being cut off or having to figure out where they were going to sleep that night, and to take the stressor away, you know, really, you know, it's a profound thing for them as young adults. And for us, too, because we have the THP program, it's a natural feeder into the THP+FC. And so, you know, last year when we would have had 11 of our youth emancipate and move out, probably into THP+, scattered sites, because they were all fully capable of that, they all opted to stay in, and they all stayed with us. And so it's just been nice to kind of walk with them their first and second years of college. And so they have a real investment in speaking and having a voice and contributing to the savings. So I would say it's easy to fundraise. And then I think also there's a lot of grants out there that want to, you know, fund for this population in different capacities. And so sometimes that might look like, you know, funding for housing so you could offset the housing costs a little bit, or funding for a case manager to case manage the youth, or an independent living skills coach, and then you can offset like that kind of funding to supplement your programs. So I don't think it's that hard. And then my other point at the beginning is it's surprising how few youth actually participate.
Thank you.
Unfortunately. I wish someone did that when I was 19.
Yeah, thank you. That's really good information. I am going to try unmuting Lisa Mueller. I think, there we go. Lisa, can you try speaking? Looks like you're unmuted, Lisa. Can you say something? That's odd. Okay, so let's actually move on because someone has submitted another question on the questions bar. This will be our last question. The question is, have you given out any savings yet? Do you give in one payment, or is it better to give in several payments to help them stretch those savings?
We, well, when we did THP+ scattered sites for 3 years, we had a lot of youth participate in this. We actually had one girl leave our program with a little over $9,000, so at the end, and she'd bought a car halfway through. So what we try to do is encourage them to have a goal of how much they want to save for something, but so the answer to the question is, we might give it out in small increments if they're looking to they're ready to move out and they need a security deposit, or they've been talking with their case manager and they got their driver's license and insurance and registration, or they're getting ready to get a car and they have money for all those things. Then we would actually have them come in and meet with me as the director and have a conversation around the experience of savings and what it is that they want to buy and why and how it's going to help them meet their goals, and then they can tap into the money. Otherwise, we would just pay it all out at the end.
Okay, thanks. I know I said that was the last question, but I was dishonest. We're going to do one more question, just because I want to clarify something you said. Someone said, when you say it is surprising how few youth participate, do you mean that few youth actually pay any rent, or what were you referring to?
No. Everybody pays rent when they can. Even though, and it is voluntary, and we frame it in that way, but like they also want to be treated like adults, and so we have that kind of a conversation too. So I would say, besides one, maybe two of the 12 we have are paying rent. And that's because, like the one I explained, has some significant, both of them have significant mental health issues. Everybody's paying rent. It's so few participate in the savings match that it's easy to fund something like that because it feels really big, especially if you have like 20 or 30 youth in your program, but so few participate in it that it isn't really that impactful on a budget or fundraising.
Amy, about how many people about do you have participating in your savings program right now?
Well, we only have one boy that's taking full advantage of it, like giving the $250. But everybody else is right now. I mean, but this is like they all have jobs because it's the summer, and they're all giving their case manager something, but nobody's given more than $50 over the rent except for that one youth, and we have 12 youth.
Okay.
So you're talking like 7 or 8 kids that are giving like between $10 and $50 a month towards the rent or towards the savings match.
Well, Amy, this is Amy Lumley. It's been so helpful, and I think being able and willing to be on a call with all these people and just kind of share what you're doing, and just so people can know about your program, because we've had conversations about the work that your organization does with young parents. Are any of your 12 young people young parents at this time?
No, actually we have young moms in THPP, but they haven't turned 18 yet.
Oh, okay. So you expect you will in the future?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. We have. Yeah. Surprisingly, we haven't had any referrals, but yes, we would take moms.
Great. Well, this is so helpful. And any other just kind of thing you want to share with the THP+ community? I mean, you are definitely up and running, I think, on the earlier end.
Yeah.
Any just before we close out and go to the next item, just observations, how it's going for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and I'm trying to help our other offices get licensed in other counties, and then you get reminded of how every county wants to and does everything different. And so I feel for people in other counties that are a little bit behind, because I feel like the youth are the ones that are really suffering because of that, because it's a great option for them. And the only other thing I shared with Simone was, the SILPs just make things really challenging, and my hope is that one day we have some real benchmarks, or at least parameters around what kids should be living in them and not just living in them because it's the easiest or the only option. And so those youth that are interviewing with me currently to come into THP+FC because they're not really doing well in a SILP are really entitled about their $800, and they want case management and housing, and not really, actually none of them have actually opted to come into the program when you say, well, you're not going to get that $800, but I'm going to pay for everything else and give you this. So it's hard to bring them back once they have all of that money. And I know it doesn't give them a lot of anything except for just money. So, yeah. But it's great, and I'm really excited that so many people are going to be doing it.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah.
Again, thank you so much for participating. And we're going to move on to the next item.
Great. Thank you.
So
how do I mute myself or mute off?
Amy will remute you.
Okay.
Okay. So we're going to move on to our regular item. We have this, I think, on every call we've had this. We have made some movement here. We now have 15 approved THP Plus foster care providers, and as you see, 11 of them are also THP Plus providers, so familiar to us. And this is as of June 3rd, and again, I get this information from the California Department of Social Services Foster Care Rates and Audits Branch website. And on the next screen, I'll show you that website if you want to, or on 2 screens from now, I'll show you that website. Actually, you know what? I'm realizing it may not be on this PowerPoint. But anyways, we have several counties now that have THP Plus foster care housing located in them. This has really ballooned since our last call because we had some providers, new providers get licensed, and also learned of providers that had already been established that were operating in more and more counties. So as you can see, this is, 20-something counties. So we're really moving along in this. This is really what we had hoped would happen with THP Plus foster care, that it would, start really ramping up and being available to youth, and that is what's happening. So very exciting. I'm just going to turn this back over to Amy, and she is going to talk about THP Plus foster care participants because we have some numbers, some data on participation.
Thank you, Simone. And I just want to acknowledge what a great job Simone does with the THP Plus website, which she totally revamped, and with the list that she keeps. Again, all the data is directly from CCL, but the value that she brings to it is she checks with each licensed program to see where they're operating. And that's how she gets the data for this slide. So these 28 counties have a THP Plus foster care program physically located in them. And so that takes, because if you just look at the CCL list, you don't know where they actually are operating. And so this, the list that's on the website combines those 2 pieces of information. And maybe before we move on, does anyone have a question about that? Or, we're happy to answer that. You can raise your hand or send it in, or you can as we move through the content, and we'll answer it then.
Amy, I just want to interject real quick. Just the list that's on the website, the address of the URL of where you can get that information from the rates website is on there. So I just want to clarify.
Thank you. So I think most people are familiar that our statewide database that tracks children and youth in foster care is called the CWS-CMS, Child Welfare Services Case Management System, I believe it is. And we are very fortunate in California that UC Berkeley has a research center that archives all that data and slices and dices it and makes it publicly available. And so, extended care went into effect January 1st, and they are now, we now have some actual information of non-minors who are in foster care. A while back, our organization did a little mini policy brief on young people who are in a SILP. We have almost 900 young people who are placed in SILPs effective January 1st. And this data on the slide is young people as of January 1st who were placed in THP Plus foster care. So I'm sharing this with you for a few different reasons. One is just so you can have this information, but actually more importantly is so that you can know how to access it yourself, so that you can go to that hyperlinked website in the bottom corner and know how to find this. And so what is at the website is a placement called transitional housing. And so the way to find the number of young people in THP plus foster care is to select that placement option, but for 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. So essentially, there's a placement called transitional housing. If they're minors, then they're in THPP, and if they're non-minors, they're in THP plus foster care. This is the information that was confirmed with me from the research center at UC Berkeley. So it would be good, as we move forward in this implementation, for you to look. You have the capacity yourselves now to look on that database, look on that website, and get a sense of who the young people in your county are. And so here's who we have today. I think we have a pretty interesting, largely disproportionate number of young women versus young men. Of our 117 young people in the program, again, this is as of January 1st when implementation was quite limited. You can see the ethnic breakdown. And then the length of stay in foster care, that data resonates very strongly with what we expected. Most of the young people who are in transitional housing are not new to foster care. You can see the number of young people who have been in care 60-plus months. That's 43 young people. That's the most, the highest number. So we expect very soon the data that is effective April 1st, 2013 will be posted, and we'll redo this analysis. This was really just to kind of whet your appetite and to share the fact that in the past, THP Plus data, the only place that was available was our participant tracking system. But because THP Plus foster care is actually foster care, it is available on the CWS CMS within that database, and that's a positive thing. But again, we have about, as of January 1st, 117 youth in THP Plus foster care, about 900 young people in a SILP. And in fact, there are more young people in a SILP than there are with relative placements. So if you haven't seen that policy brief we did, I'd be happy to circulate that. And it also includes the number of young people in SILPs by county. But again, we kind of expected that because we didn't have THP Plus foster care up and running. We're going to really briefly run through this question of the week. This was a question that was submitted by a THP Plus provider who just wanted a little bit of extra information on the infant supplement. They wanted to know if young people in THP Plus foster care were eligible for it, and if they got one per child or if they got just one for being a parent. And then they wanted to know, does that rate go to the provider or does it get paid directly to the young people? So just very briefly, one rate is paid per custodial child, and it is included in the rate that is paid to the provider. However, of course, the provider is able to pass on that to the young parent to help cover the child care costs and the other costs related to a child. At this point, I wasn't able to unearth any requirement to do that, but my research isn't done, and I'm sure that we'd all agree that that would be a good practice. But we also know that the case management costs of young parents are higher too. So as we get more information about that, we'll definitely share it with you. But that was just a recent question of the week about young parents. So any questions about that? Or we're really hoping many of you are serving young parents or will soon be serving young parents because we know they are a group that is so in need. All right, none that I'm seeing. So we'll move on. I'll expect, just give me the high sign, Simone. So this is quarterly data. We're going to shift to THP Plus now. And so about 2/3 of providers enter their data quarterly into the participant tracking system. So I'm just going to run through how our young people in THP Plus are doing. And again, this is data that's available on a provider basis. It's available on a county basis. And what I'm presenting is what's available on a state basis, statewide basis. And we can use this information a lot of ways to improve our practice, to understand where young people are struggling, to advocate for more funds, to protect potential reduction of funds. But now more than ever, we need to be data-driven, and so this is our effort to try and support that effort. And we've had a number of providers, probably about 4, that have come on to use the participant tracking system recently. And as we always say, it's a free system that's available to any THP Plus provider. So here's our first slide. Young people in foster care, in THP Plus are definitely just over half are working, but the rate that want to work and who are not working is 38%. So the economic recovery is early, and the youngest and least skilled are feeling that recovery the latest. And so this very much resonates with what we hear from providers, the challenges young people are having getting into the labor market, and particularly getting into the higher wage jobs. Here's what we have in terms of the average monthly income. A little under $900 a month. The average hourly wage a little over $9. Over half are receiving at least one form of other public benefit, which from the perspective of the John Burton Foundation, we're very encouraged by that. The story that tells me is that those of you who are providers and working in counties are doing a very good job of making sure young mothers are getting WIC, making sure that we're fully capitalizing on the available resources to support these young people, because they certainly need it. Now, of course, when they're 50, I'm not sure if we would want to see that high of a percentage, but these are very young adults at this point in a very challenged economy. And then 22% are receiving some other form of financial support, and that can be ad hoc assistance from a family member or something like that. So just here's what young people are doing in terms of enrollment. A little under half are currently enrolled, but most young people are not currently enrolled. And this is data effective March 31st, so this is not the effect of a summer break. This is young people who, what we really see in the data for THP Plus is programs are very good at getting young people enrolled in community college, and it is challenging to keep them in it. I think many of us have seen the cycle of an enthusiasm for post-secondary education, perhaps too many units enrolled, not great basic skills in math and reading, not very established study habits, and then a pattern of exiting that enrollment. That's, of course, not always the case, but I think for the more academically fragile young people, it is something. So you can kind of see in the data where young people enroll and then disenroll. And so just many of you probably know that we also do a project called California College Pathways, and Debbie Rauscher leads that project. And she has a series on retention for young people in post-secondary education. And she's actually going to have an upcoming event that talks about how to draw on trauma-informed services to promote academic retention. And we can include information about that briefing in the follow-up information. But I don't have any magic bullets here. It's just what young people are experiencing, and it's challenging. It's hard out there. Next, we're looking at what degree they're pursuing. The vast majority are an AA. We've still got some that are wrapping up their high school degree or their GED, and we do a weekly newsletter. If those of you who get it may have seen that the GED is going to become much harder on January 1st, which doesn't mean that young people, we shouldn't prepare them to succeed at that, but it might be a catalyst for those of you who are working with young people who are kind of close to finishing that battery of tests to wrap that up before the new year. And then it's encouraging to see that we do have young people pursuing the bachelor's degree, albeit not a high number. Just some other information. 1 in 5 young people, that 19%, are custodial parents. And so you're out there doing some really hard work with young people who have a lot of needs and their children. And it's extremely important work. So make sure to spread, to know that fact for your own program, and make the case that you're preventing poverty and supporting a young family. It's not just a program for young adults. This is a program for young families for 1 in 5 participants. 80% report having health insurance. We'll hopefully see that number increase with the implementation of the Affordable Care Act expansion to 26. We're not going to go into that on this call, but we will next call. Many report having a permanent connection. And the last 2 numbers are around, while they were in THP Plus, how many have either been incarcerated or detained, and how many have had an actual conviction. And and those numbers are a fraction compared to what if you look at young people who are not in a supportive services program like THP Plus. So the fact that those are sub 10%, I think is something for our community to take a lot of pride in. And I hope you share that information with your board and your supervisors, board of supervisors, and your staff. Of course, we'd love it to be zero, but these are extremely high-risk young people. So just to wrap it up, to not bore you too much, what have we seen since the last quarter? There is a slight decrease in the number of young people working, a slight increase in the percentage who are not seeking employment, and these are kind of discouraged workers. And we've had a flat hourly wage, which, in this economy, it's nice not to see it go down. A slight increase in the average monthly income, an increase in the number that are receiving public benefits, and a slight decrease in other financial support. And sometimes these percentage changes are so small, it's hard to know if there's any story going on or if it's just, it's just kind of noise in terms of slight changes. Education, we did have a slight increase that are engaged in the educational activity, which is positive, and a decrease in the percentage reporting they haven't graduated from high school. We still have about 1 in 5 young people in THP+ who don't have that minimum academic credential. A very small increase in the number who are custodial parents. That's just 1%. My guess would be that there's no real movement there. And then the increase in who have health insurance. But again, we're hoping to see a big change there with the extension of Medi-Cal till age 26 for all young people who are in foster care as of age 18. So let's pause there and see if anyone has any questions. Hang on just 1 second. All right, so there's just a clarification on the question of the week. The kind of question is it actually a additional stipend per child? And then it's also raising a concern is, could this potentially be an incentive for a young person to potentially have another child? I may not be paraphrasing this correctly. It is per child because it is called a supplement to the rate. And I think your concern, I think the concern behind your point is a good one. Often when young people have children, a lot of attention goes on the baby, but we don't take time to discuss subsequent pregnancy prevention. And for those of you who have been following the work of SB 528, we know that 1 in 3 young people who get pregnant in foster care as a teenager will have will become pregnant again by age 21. So the issue of discussing subsequent pregnancy prevention is extremely important. And so I think to that extent, we have to make sure it's not just if we're, a program serving parents. Almost all American children age 18 to 21 are having sexual intercourse. So it's not something just for other kids. It's every program should be thinking about this and having these conversations. But it's a fair point, and I think it's an interesting point to raise. So another question is, where does the additional funding come from? So this is part of the foster care rate, and foster care, as we've talked about on these calls, has been realigned, and along with a funding source. And so in the past, there was if a child is federally eligible, there'd be a federal share of cost, and then a state, and then a county. But under realignment, if a child is federally eligible, the portion is half of it in California is paid by the federal government, half is paid by the county. But I am not 100% sure if the same division occurs for the infant supplement. So we will look into that. But the bottom line is it comes from the public sector. This isn't anything the THP+ providers are expected to provide. And I think the real cost of teen pregnancy, while the infant supplement is definitely a hard cost, is from so many things: the lost wages over time, the increased health care costs, And the National Campaign to Prevent Teen and Unintended Pregnancy has a great calculator that shows the economic cost of teen pregnancy, and most of these pregnancies are intended. So that's kind of a larger call for another day, but I think your point's a good one. Thank you for sharing it. Let me take one more. The last item, so another item as we move on to wrap up the call is, speaking of SB 528, the THP+ community has come forward once again to save the day. You have sent so many letters of support, and I just want to thank you. And if you haven't gotten a chance to send in a letter of support, today it would be a great day to do it. And so the website is right there, and you can go to the website, download it. I want to just take a moment to share with you, there have been some very serious amendments to SB 528, and we can't deny that those amendments have happened. So I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but because this community has backed this bill so actively, I feel like it's necessary to take a moment to share what they are. So the first amendment is originally SB 528 required the county child welfare system to inform all young people at age 12 of their right to consent to reproductive health and sexual development services. That was changed from a requirement to inform them to it authorizes them. So it kind of reduces, it authorizes them, but it doesn't mandate them to do it. And so while this wasn't what we wanted, it is still a step forward because there is still some ambiguity on the county level in some counties about whether county child welfare workers are authorized to have these reproductive health conversations. This is what we heard from a number of our sponsors, and so this will clear any ambiguity up. They absolutely are authorized to bring up these topics, to have conversations, not just about pregnancy prevention, but just healthy human sexual development more generally. So that was an amendment. And the second, I think, I won't editorialize too much. The second amendment was regarding the pregnant and parenting conferences. So SB 528 required when a young person became pregnant to hold a conference to discuss, to make sure they're referred to prenatal care and to update their case plan. And unfortunately, that provision was changed from a requirement, into a may, which makes them entirely optional for counties. And so we know many counties are already doing this. It's very good practice. But SB 528 no longer has the language which would require all counties to do it. And so that's a change. The two provisions that remain unchanged are the access to subsidized child care and the requirement to track the number of parenting pregnant youth in foster care. So sorry to belabor that a little bit, but I do feel like because you all have been so supportive, we want to keep you up to speed. Just again, very briefly, we're going to be conducting our annual report this year. We do it every year. You're going to be getting a link shortly, and we're going to be doing it on THP+ and THP+ foster care. And if there's something you would like us to ask the whole community, please let us know. We can't include a million questions, but if there's something you think that is important to be known, we're happy to try and include it. Just a few other things. This funding opportunity. So this is a great opportunity for all current THP+ providers. It's a funding opportunity. The hyperlinks there will send this right out. And it is essentially a grant from HHS to try and prevent homelessness among foster youth. The grant is for a 2-year plan. It's like a 2-year planning grant, and then based on that, they're going to fund, a number of grants. I think it's 5 years, $1 million each. But given this community has been doing this work, for a long time, this type of funding would be a great complement to your THP+ funding. So, the devil's in the details, how you can get it to blend with your current funding, but just encouraging everyone to take a look at that. And then Simone is going to do a quick poll for those of you on the call. We do these calls every month, but we want to know how frequently you want them. So we're just going to take a minute right now, and if you could respond to that poll about whether you want them to continue to be monthly or not, we'd really appreciate it. All right, people are continuing to respond. I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but I think if anyone going once, going twice, if you want to enter it, I just closed it. So it looks like 75% of people want to keep doing it monthly, and oh, I don't know how. Great. So we'll keep doing it monthly. And of course, if you don't want to do it, if you don't want to be on it, just don't be on it. We'll keep taping them and we'll keep circulating them. And we're always open to more input on what we should do. It seems like people really like the rent presentations. We'll do some more, and we'll ask more providers who are so generous with their time and the content of their organizations to come on. And we'll try to have there be variety. So the last item is Simone launched this THP+, foster care discussion group. It is kind of slow going. If you want to join the hyperlinks on the presentation, we're probably going to pilot this thing until about October 1st. Honestly, if it doesn't pick up speed, we might discontinue it just because it takes a certain amount of management. But let's give the college a try until then. And then lastly is the next call, since we're continuing to do it monthly, is July 11th. So let's wrap up with any final questions or concerns people have, anything, comments that they want to make. Someone is writing in saying Thursdays seem to conflict with a number of your offices, asking if we'd be willing to do a poll to see which other time would work. Yeah, we're happy to do that. Our goal is to host it when the maximum number of people can participate. We've changed it before. We wanted the providers and the County of San Diego to be able to participate, and so, perhaps we could find a better time for everyone. Any other questions, anything that you want to raise, Simone, before we wrap it up?
I just want to tell people that, we are going to send out this PowerPoint, but that it's always, after the call, it's always available on the THP Plus website, www.thp+plus.org, and there's a section on the monthly call where we archive all of our PowerPoints from the calls and any handouts that we use during the call.
All right. Well, thank you everyone again. I'm looking for raised hands. I don't see any in my little virtual thing. Thanks, everyone, for being on the call, and I hope everyone has a very good day. Take care.
The organizer has ended the session, and this call will be disconnected. Goodbye.